So as an expert, it's likely that you've heard get on podcast. Now, do you start your own podcast show or do you appear on other people's shows as an expert? Hi, this is Kathleen Gage, and I've been on both sides of the mic well over 1,000 times, and I'm going to break it down and let you know what would be the best choice for you as an expert. Now, before we go any further, what I want you to do is go ahead and hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, because you're going to get some great videos and training on which is the best for you when it comes to podcast appearances. So the question is, podcast host or guest appearance? We're going to break it down in this video. So let's start by looking at why podcast appearances, why podcast shows. First of all, visibility. Regardless of whether you're a host or you're making guest appearances, visibility is great. Next, your market reach. You can reach more people in less time with a lower investment when you do podcast shows or podcast appearances. You can fast track your success. Wherever you're trying to go, you can get there a lot faster with podcast appearances. I have one client that had never been on a podcast show before, her first show ever. The first time she appeared as an expert. She's a fine artist. She does retreats in New Mexico, very high-end retreats, and she talked about art. She talked about retreats. People went over to her website, and one woman signed up for her $8,000 retreat. So she made $8,000 that was directly related to appearing on a podcast show. Low marketing costs. You can showcase your expertise. And again, regardless of whether you're the host or you're making a guest appearance, you can showcase your expertise. And it's not about selling on the show. It's actually about creating massive value for the audience. And then from there, you actually have your foundation in place. And we're going to talk about that in this short video. And often it leads to sales in a very low-key way. My client, Gwen, she made $8,000 on her first appearance. She was on another show. She made $5,000. And if I was Gwen, all I would be doing is podcast appearances, because she gets a really high conversion rate of people hearing her on a show. They go to her website, they look around, they see what they like, and they sign up. It's great for raising awareness around your books, around speaking, consulting, restaurants, manufacturing companies, and you. Now, here's the thing. With speaking, for a lot of us, we used to go to conferences and we would speak at conferences. You can't do that anymore. For an indefinite period of time, we're kind of bound to using online resources. And that's why podcast appearances are great for anybody who is a professional speaker and makes money as a speaker, because you can showcase your speaking ability and you drive people to your website. Bada boom, bada boom. If you can hold a conversation, you can shine. That's pretty much it. The challenge that I see a lot of people have is they try to be too formal on podcast shows. And again, regardless of what side of the mic you're on, it's all about you being you and you letting your personality come through. So if you can hold a conversation, you can definitely shine on podcast shows. So let's talk about some of the facts and figures. And this is from Podcast Insights. I grabbed a few of the facts and figures for the United States. 50% of all U.S. homes are podcast fans. 45% of monthly podcast listeners have household incomes over $75,000 versus 35% for the total population. So it's a pretty affluent, pretty high disposable income listenership or viewership. 27% of U.S. podcast listeners have a 4-year college degree. Very well educated market. And so if you are looking for people with disposable income, if you are looking for people with a higher education, podcasting is definitely the way to go. And again, do you have your own show or do you make appearances? We're going to talk about that. 49% of podcast listening is done at home. Now, I would say that that actually is going to be higher because of the pandemic and because of a lot of people working from home. This was done in 2017, and in 2020, those numbers have dramatically changed because more and more people are working from home. So at least 49% in 2017. Now, I would say it's probably 70 to 75%, maybe even higher. 22% listen while driving. Now, again, that probably has gone down by virtue of the fact of the pandemic and stay-at-home orders. Comedy is the most popular podcasting genre, followed by education and news. So people want to be entertained, they want to laugh, and they want good, timely news. Brand awareness. This is another important thing to consider with podcast appearances. Again, whether you're a host or you're going to appear on other people's shows. Podcast listeners are much more active on every social media channel. 94% are active on at least one versus 81% for the entire population. Now, there are some people that are active on 2 or 3 platforms. Myself, I have 3 primary platforms that I spend time with. Facebook is one, LinkedIn is the other, and Twitter is the other. And I do listen to podcast shows. And so I fit that criteria of the people that I'm very active on social media and I listen to podcast shows. So that's important to keep in mind, because when it comes to the marketing of episodes, which we're going to talk a little bit about, you want to make sure that you are promoting on social media channels. Podcast listeners are more likely to follow companies and brands on social media. That's a good fact to know. Podcast listeners are more likely to subscribe to Netflix or Amazon Prime, meaning they're less likely to be exposed to TV advertising. And 69% agree that podcast ads made them aware of new products and services. That's valuable information, because when you host your own show, when you appear on other people's shows, people pay attention to the brands you talk about. They pay attention to who you are. They pay attention to what books you talk about. All of that plays into the success of being on both sides of the microphone. So let's take a look at which side you should be on. When you're hosting your own show, the things you want to look at is, why are you doing a show? Who is the show for? Why should they listen to you? You have to name your show. You have to determine the platform. And what I mean by that is, it going to be audio only, or is it going to be audio and video? What is the length of the show? You have to invest in recording equipment. All of that plays into hosting your own show. Now, there's more on hosting your own show. You have to get recording and editing software. You have to do the editing. You have to convert the episodes. You have to create show notes. You have to find a hosting platform. I happen to use Libsyn for my podcast, and for my videos, I use YouTube. Submitting to directories, that would be podcast directories. You have to promote, and then monetizing. And monetization, that's a conversation completely unto its own. In a future video, I'll be talking about monetizing podcast shows. But let's go back and take a look again. Why are you doing a show? Who is the show for? Why should they listen to you? That's a big one. What's the name of your show? Determine the platform. Now, in naming your show, the name of the show is really important in drawing in an audience. My show, Plant-Based Eating for Health, that's really clear on the type of show it is, Plant-Based Eating for Health. If the show name does not really indicate what the show is about, you could be losing market reach. But you have to determine the platform. Is it going to be video? Is it going to be audio? If it's video, you have to have a way to record with a camera. You have to have a good microphone. So all of these are considerations for the investments that you're going to make. What's the length of time? Because that plays into how much it will cost in time or money, or both, to edit the episode. You can figure for every minute of recording time, it's going to be 3 to 4 minutes of editing time. Okay, so you want to look at that before deciding to host your own show. Then you've got the recording and editing software. You've got editing itself, converting your episodes, show notes, hosting a platform, submitting to directories, promoting, and monetizing. Then you've got expert appearances. Now, what I just showed you is if you're going to host your own show. With expert appearances, it's real simple. You set up your foundation, and your foundation includes setting up your website so that when people visit your website, which they will, that it's visitor ready, it's easy to navigate. You've got a good media page on there. You've got a way for them to get on your list. You've got your bio up, and it's engaging. Also your blog, also your social media channels. That's all a part of your foundation, because when you're on a show and the host says, well, how can people find you? You want to give them one way to find you, and everything should be on that location. In other words, when a host says to me, well, Kathleen, how can people find out more about your business services? I would say, go to powerupforprofits.com. That's powerupforprofits.com. And you'll find my social media links. You'll find my blog. You'll find my YouTube channel link. And so they can go to one location and they can find everything. It's really important that you have your foundation set up before you start making a bunch of appearances. However, don't let that stop you if you get an opportunity to be on a show and you say, oh, well, I don't have everything perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. You're constantly in creation mode. Then you have to research the shows that you want to be on. It's a really good idea as you're researching to make sure you know what the niche is. You listen to at least portions of episodes, and you know that they actually bring on guests. Then you do your outreach, and sometimes with outreach, it's not a big, long, elaborate process. It can be something as simple as you connect with this person on LinkedIn, let's say, and you say, I was listening to your show. I really like your platform. I'm actually an expert at whatever it may be. May we have a conversation about the possibility of me being on your show? It can be something that simple. In other cases, there's a form on the website, and you have to actually fill out that form. If they ask you to fill out a form, fill out the form. Then you do the interview, and then you promote. Those are kind of, in a nutshell, the comparisons between hosting your own show and doing expert appearances. In most cases, if this is all new to you, appear on other people's shows. And if you're not quite sure what to do, before I tell you where to get the checklist of step-by-step what you need to do, I want you to subscribe and hit the like button if you're on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on, let's say, iTunes or Spotify, go ahead and do a rating and a review and subscribe to the channel. But if you're not quite sure what to do, go to powerupforprofits.com/checklist. That's powerupforprofits.com/checklist. And you'll get my full checklist of how to get booked on lots of podcast shows by going step by step on a very, very proven formula. And what you're going to learn is you're going to discover how to determine the types of shows to target, find out how to effectively research shows, learn what you must do before you're on a show, discover simple ways to promote shows to assure that you're going to get even more visibility. And I'll tell you, hosts love it when you do that. Find out what marketing materials you need in order to get on the shows with the least amount of effort, and learn a super hack to get on big name shows in record time. So that's the podcast interview checklist. Go ahead and subscribe to powerupforprofits.com checklist. So there you have it. Those are a few comparisons between starting your own show and appearing on other people's shows. I highly recommend, if you're just starting out, go ahead and appear on other people's shows, and don't think that you're going to get on big name shows right away. Start right where you're at. If you've never been on a show before and you have a friend who has a podcast show, reach out to them, and if it's a good match, say, can I be on your show? Start right where you're at. Even if it's a brand new show, that's okay. I was reading something recently where the person recommended, don't get on a show unless they've had 20 episodes. Well, you know, the host has to start somewhere too. And if you're a good fit for their audience, they're going to be more than happy to have you on their show. Main thing is, it needs to be a match. You need to show up on time, and you need to be prepared, because if they do video like we're doing right here, you need to be ready to go on video. Even if you think it's going to be audio, go ahead and prepare as if you're going to be on video. This is Kathleen Gage with Power Up for Profits podcast and Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast, where I have been on both sides of the mic well over 1,000 times, and I love teaching experts how to get on shows to amplify their visibility. And amplify, my good friend Brian G. Johnson, he uses that term for YouTube, but I want to say amplify your visibility with podcast shows, and you'll go out there and you'll make a difference. Have a great day.